At the bustling city hospital, everyone froze when the tall, elegant woman in a silk kimono stepped through the doors, her eyes red from crying. She spoke softly, desperately, but no one understood a word she said. Nurses exchanged puzzled looks, the receptionist fumbled through translation apps, and the crowd whispered. The woman was clearly in distress, her trembling hands clutched a photo of a young man, maybe her son. But the language barrier built an invisible wall between her and the world. "Does anyone speak Japanese?" A doctor shouted across the room. Silence answered him. The woman sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she pressed the photo to her chest. People turned away, uncomfortable, not knowing what to do. And then, from the far corner of the hallway, where the janitors usually worked quietly, a man with a mop in hand stopped what he was doing. That man was Arif, a janitor no one noticed, no one spoke to, except when they needed the floors cleaned faster. He watched the scene unfold, heart aching. Something inside him told him to step forward, but the voices around him held him back. "You're just a janitor. Stay out of it." But then he saw her cry again, whispering something so broken, so lost, that it echoed in his heart. He took a breath, walked closer, and said softly in fluent Japanese, "Sumimasen, daijoubu desu ka?" "Excuse me, are you okay?" The woman's head snapped up, disbelief flooding her face. "Anata, Nihongo ga hanasemasu ka?" "You speak Japanese?" Arif nodded. "Hi. Watashi wa chato dake." "Yes, a little." In an instant, everything changed. She grabbed his hands, speaking rapidly, tears spilling as she pointed to the photo. Arif's face went pale as he listened. Her son, her only child, was in critical condition after an accident while studying abroad. She had just landed in the country but couldn't find him because the hospital's records had a spelling error in his name. For hours, she had been running from hospital to hospital, searching, unheard. Arif's heart pounded. He turned to the staff, translating every desperate word she said. The doctors immediately checked the records again, and within minutes, they found the right patient, Hiroshi Tanaka, miswritten as Hiroshi Tonka. The woman gasped when she saw the name. Arif guided her to the ICU, where her son lay pale and still under the machines. When she saw him, she broke. The sound of a mother's sob is something words can't hold. She fell beside her son's bed, whispering his name over and over. The doctors explained, through Arif, that the young man was stable but in a coma. He translated every word carefully, his voice steady even when his eyes watered. Over the next few days, Arif stayed close. He helped her talk with doctors, filled out forms, and translated medical updates. In between, he learned her story, Yumi Tanaka, a billionaire from Japan who built her fortune through kindness and discipline. She had lost her husband years ago and poured all her love into her son, who wanted to study medicine overseas to heal the world. But what struck Yumi most wasn't how much Arif helped, it was how he did it. With humility, quiet care, and no expectation of reward. He brought her tea during long waits, smiled when she felt hopeless, and encouraged her when doctors delivered uncertain news. She often asked why he spoke Japanese, and he finally told her. Years ago, Arif had worked in Japan as a factory laborer. He lived alone, far from his family, in a small town near Kyoto. One winter, an elderly woman collapsed near his apartment, and he was the only one around to help. She turned out to be a retired teacher who later taught him Japanese out of gratitude. She told me that learning someone's language is like learning their heart, Arif said softly. I never knew I'd use it again, until today. Yumi's eyes glistened. You learned her heart, and now you saved mine. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, Hiroshi began to recover. The first words he whispered when he woke were in Japanese, and Arif was there to translate his gratitude to the doctors. When Yumi hugged her son, she turned to Arif, saying, You didn't just translate my words. You translated my pain, my hope, my love. When Hiroshi was discharged, Yumi surprised the hospital by calling a press conference. Cameras flashed, and everyone whispered, Why was a billionaire here? Then she told the story of the janitor who spoke the language of compassion. She praised Arif publicly, calling him her hero, and announced she would fund a new language bridge program in hospitals across the country, so no one, ever again, would suffer because they couldn't be understood. That day, Arif stood there in his old janitor's uniform, humbled, tears in his eyes. He didn't need fame or fortune, but when Yumi offered him a new role as the program's first coordinator, he smiled through the tears. "I'll do it," he said. Because sometimes, one word in someone's language can change their whole world. The crowd erupted in applause. Doctors who once overlooked him now shook his hand. Nurses smiled proudly. For the first time, people saw not just the janitor, but the man who turned compassion into a bridge between hearts. As the video fades out, the narrator's voice speaks softly. Never underestimate the power of kindness. You never know whose life you might change, or who might change yours. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because in a world full of noise, sometimes all we need is someone who truly understands. And as the screen dims, the final image lingers, Arif, standing by the window of the hospital, watching the sunrise, whispering to himself in Japanese, "Arigato, for letting me matter."